My name is Joe Guay, and I teach a course on crisis mapping for humanitarian action at Northeastern University. I'm also a humanitarian technology researcher. As a social scientist, I've been exploring two research questions lately. First, how do advances in information communication technologies impact humanitarian response in complex crises? And secondly, how do these technologies fundamentally reshape the humanitarian system? I'd like to explore these questions and use this conference as a platform to engage further ahead. The context that humanitarians are used to working in is characterized by insecurity, instability, and large-scale loss of life. While it's helpful to distinguish between sudden onset natural disasters like Nepal, protracted conflicts like Syria, and epidemics like Ebola, one thing is certain: actionable intelligence about needs, infrastructure, and who's doing what where is critical and can mean the difference between life and death. Furthermore, according to the National Intelligence Council Global Trends 2030 report, the world is changing around us. We expect to see rapid unsustainable urbanization in the global south, climate change and resource scarcity, for example, the so-called food, energy, and water crisis, and the diffusion of global power and the rise of multipolarity. This means that more crises will happen more frequently and they'll be larger, so-called mega catastrophes. This also means that the already stretched thin humanitarian community will struggle to cope in dealing with these crises. But a different kind of shift is also taking place, one that has catalyzed new possibilities to respond to crises. There's an exponential growth in mobile technologies such as SMS and 3 and 4G, access to the internet, social media, and cloud computing, and the affordability of commercial remote sensing tools. One example worth noting is the 400% growth in mobile penetration rate in the top 20 recipients of humanitarian aid from 2005 to 2011. This means that big data can be a big deal for humanitarian organizations. It is in this context that the rise of crisis mappers, volunteer and technical communities, and so-called digital humanitarians have emerged. I have 3 examples here, and they indicate differences in the context, tools, methods, actors, and outputs that are out there. For example, the Satellite Sentinel project was a consortium of public-private partnerships that leveraged near real-time satellite imagery analysis for conflict early warning systems and for human rights monitoring in the region of South Sudan in 2011. Meanwhile, Standby Task Force is a network of digital humanitarian volunteers, and they use crowdsourcing the internet to verify, update, and geotag baseline information about Ebola treatment units in West Africa. This in the middle actually contributed to the most comprehensive list of locations of those facilities. Despite the relative success of these and many more, there are still challenges. For example, around the verification and accuracy of data generated through social media, crowdsourcing, and otherwise non-traditional means. The training of digital volunteers who are now on the front lines of these crises. And also in dealing with the explosion of volume, velocity, and variety of data, of information products. The Nepal earthquake, for example, represents a shift that while previous data and tools may have been used in certain settings, in Nepal they all converge simultaneously in an explosive way. Baseline data, satellite imagery, rapid surveys, video, text was pouring out of host governments, Digital Globe, Google Skybox, UAviators, traditional media, social media, Facebook, and they were all being processed by Tomnod platforms, OSM, Kathmandu Living Labs, Translators Without Borders, Micromappers, Standby Task Force, and others. They were putting out spreadsheets, PDFs, SITREPs, interactive maps, and a multitude of platforms. Just like the tons of food being left out on a tarmac and distribution problems, so too can digital information products be left out in the vast space of the internet, just waiting to be used. In some ways, the challenges of crisis mapping have been addressed by examining the tools, platforms, and components. But the assemblage of divergent data streams requires a new, more holistic approach. In this way, we need to look at where crisis mapping fits into the the information management process and the humanitarian cluster architecture. The problem is we just don't know how traditional actors are using this information or how this information is impacting response. One way forward could be moving from a supply-driven analytics approach to a demand-driven one that focuses and frames the use of these technologies within the current architecture of the response. We could generate a user case study, for example, with the NGO level that determines user pathways that could then be married to a meta-analysis of the supply of information, for example, that was coming out of Nepal. And you could identify synergies where there are connections and gaps where there are none. This, I think, is a necessary step towards truly interoperability, and I would love to explore this issue more with you. Thank you.